Yeah. We can hear you. Yeah.
Hello, sir.
Hello.
Sir, this is my sister, Divyanala.
Hello,
Delighted
sir.
to meet you. Delighted to meet you.
Glad to meet you, sir.
Our in charge Madhara sir from the school.
Very
Sir.
good.
Good evening, sir. Good evening,
Good evening.
Professor
How are you? Nice
Patrick
to meet
Paul
you.
Walsh.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
Madhav.
Pleased to meet you.
Yeah. It's my honor to welcome you, Professor Patrick Paul Walsh.
Thank you very much.
Vice President of Education and Director of the SDG Academy, UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network. On behalf of the management of Nallamalla Reddy Foundation School and our secretary, sir, I welcome you, sir.
Thank you.
Let me introduce you to our society. First of all, Patrick Paul Walsh received a PhD in economics from the London School of Economics in 1994. He is a Government of Ireland, Marie Curie, IZA born RSA, London, EIIR, Brussels, and Repoa, Tanzania fellow. He is currently on secondment to UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network as Vice President of Education and Director, the SDG Academy. SDSN has been operating since 2012 under the auspices of the Secretary General of the United Nations. The SDSN mobilizes academia to induce partnerships at all levels of governance to implement the UN 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, the Paris Climate Agreement, and biodiversity frameworks. Professor Jeffrey D. Sachs, University Professor at Columbia University, is the president of the SDSN. The SDSN has offices in New York, Paris, and Kuala Lumpur. Patrick Paul Walsh remains a UCD full professor and director of the UCD MSc in Sustainable Development in partnership with the SDG Academy. He was elected president of the Statistical and Social Inquiry Society of Ireland, ISSISI, during 2022-25. He is currently a vice president of the society SSISI, is All Ireland Learned Society, established in 1847. The society is a forum for evidence-based discussions on public policy between government departments, social partners, and academia. Proceedings are published in Open Science Diamond Journal, archived in TCD, Tara, and listed on the Web of Science. During 1992-2007, he worked in Trinity College, Dublin. He left Trinity College, Dublin as a professor of economics, college fellow, and dean of social and human sciences. He was a visiting professor at KU Leuven during 1997-1999, a research scholar in the Department of Economics, Harvard University. During the academic year 2002-2003, during the academic year 2014-2015, he was a visiting senior research scholar at the Earth Institute and an adjunct professor in the School of International Public Affairs, Columbia University, New York. During 2014-15, he also worked as a senior advisor to SDSN and participated in the Union Society Scientific and Technological Community Major Group during the 8th month of Interworld, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. He was also involved as a scientist in the creation of the UN GSDR 2014 and 2015 with UN DESA. On behalf of UCD, he has secured consultative status with the UN Economic and Social Council and have participated in meetings of the HLPF, Partnership Forum, STI Forum, Youth Forum, Oceans Conference, Transforming Education Summit, Midpoint Review of the SDGs, and the Summit of the Future. He has supervised 30 PhD students to completion, 10 in TCD and 20 in UCD. His contributions to teaching and learning include courses in each academic year from 1988 to 2025 in UCD, TCD, LSE, Columbia University, Harvard, KU Leuven, and UN, HLPF Learning. Among other journals, he has published in the Review of Economics, Electoral Studies, +1 and Sustainable Development. His current research, education, and policy outreach is on UN 2020 Sustainable Development Agenda. On behalf of the management, Professor Patrick Paul, I welcome you, please.
Thank you, Bindu, and thank you very much for a very kind introduction. It is very long because I'm very old. So I think all the young people listening, you will also have all of these qualifications, which are just on the start of your journey. But anyway, it was a very kind introduction. So before what I think I want to do is I'm going to do a little review of where my kind of personal reflection on where the Sustainable Development Goals came from. And also just to take you through the goals a little bit, and then give a little reflection of where we are now and what we're going to do going forward. But I am conscious that I'm talking to teachers and young people and parents, and I think I'm very open to taking lots of questions. So let me leave a good bit of time for you guys to actually answer questions. So I'm very honored to be here. And I know obviously Dr. Nally from the Green Schools, the New York meetings we have. So I think we had the 9th Green School Conference in New York just a few weeks ago on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly. And I know this school has got lots of prizes on green initiatives. And I'm very impressed with your mission statement, because I know it is very important to learn. I'm talking to all the students, it's very important to learn mathematics and to learn how to read and write and science. So STEM is important, but also non-STEM subjects and the capability of, you know, being able to be not just a good person in your home and in your school, but also to contribute to your state in India, but to be a global citizen is actually very, very important. So hopefully when I explain what the SDGs or Sustainable Development Goals are all about, It's really about how humans everywhere can learn to coexist with each other, but also to be very kind to each other, being kind to other humans, not just that you know, but also who are in other countries and other nations, but also to be kind to nature, because humanity has been using nature as a source. You know, like this is where we build our houses, this is where we get our resources, but we've been using it for free, including water. But we're also using nature as a sink where we tend to pollute. And at the end of the day, humanity and everyone in this room, we all share one oxygen tent in a sense, or one climate chamber. We share one ocean and one global food system, and we actually depend on each other. And so it's actually very important to understand and be thankful in some ways to how we live with others and how we live with nature, and to educate ourselves like that. So I see very much from your curriculum an emphasis on extracurricular work and how you coexist with community, and how you, with your responsibility to other people and nature. But I can see from the work that you've been doing on the green schools that you're very committed to being good global citizens as well. And I think it's all credit to the Board of Management, all the Secretariat, all the teachers, all the parents. The parents are the most important of all, and all the students, that this is that this school does that. And I'm honored actually to give a talk today. So I talk a little too much, so hopefully if you want to say that we want to ask questions now, do interrupt me and I will, let's do the questions. Okay, so let's see, can I share my slides? I think I can, and hopefully you see the slideshow.
Yes, we can see.
Very good. So Dr. Nally has all these slides anyway. So so again, congratulations on a wonderful school, and I know it's all very hard work for everybody, but I think there's great joy, and when everyone graduates and they go on to be superstars, there will be great joy. Okay. So I've had my introduction.
Listen to you, first of all. We are honored to listen to you.
Oh, thank you.
So
thank you very much.
A memorable moment for all the students, teachers, and all of us to have you giving us time for a session on sustainable development goals, where you are directly involved in the framing of these. Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah, no, it's my joy. It's actually my joy to be here. But thank you. I appreciate that. I just want to explain SDSN a little bit. So, you know, I'm going to take you back in time. And for the young people, they think this is a time before time, but I'm going to take you back to 2012. And this was a place called Rio Plus 20. So we're in Brazil. And what was interesting is that the UN, you know, the UN is 80 years old, and it was set up to ensure that we'd have a lasting peace. And it has been successful up to now, let's say, that we've had in general a lasting peace across the world. But also it decided not just to think about security, but to think about sustainable development and to think about human rights and economic and social development. So we did have, and many of the students might know this, but coming into the year 2000, which is the millennium, we had, I think, that Amartya Sen, who's from India and who was a Nobel Prize winner in economics, but also he was a philosopher and a statistician, but an economist as well. And he had a great book called Development Freedoms. And he also was the one who developed the Human Development Project and also the Human Development Index. They gave the micro foundations for, and he also was instrumental on the Millennium Development Goals. Now, these were the UN goals from 2000 to 2015. And the way the UN was operating at that time was really you had the idea of high income countries, and they would potentially donate up to what's called 0.7 of GNP, or gross national product. So they were giving a share of their the value of goods and services that were produced in their economy, and they would donate it to middle to low income countries. At the time, what they wanted to do was, with the Human Development Project, Amartya Sen was talking about the disconnect between economic outcomes and societal outcomes. So he was saying some countries are rich, but people in households may not have access to food. They may not have access to water and sanitation. They may not have clean water. They may not have access to school. They may not have access to health services. So he was very much promoting the idea that there can be disconnects between economic performance and outcomes in households, in communities. So the Human Development Project was all about ensuring that it's not just income per person that we worry about, but we want to worry about whether everyone in every house, and particularly kids, can go to school, have access to education, access to health, access to clean water, and so on. And women had access to reproductive care, and so on. And that was the Millennium Development Project. But in 2012, the countries of South America, and particularly Brazil, and particularly Colombia, the country, were a bit concerned that we're looking at economic and social development in the UN, but we're not concerning ourselves properly with the environment. So there seemed to be a lot of economic success and some social success, but care of nature was very poor, in the sense they were looking at biodiversity loss, they were looking at climate change, they were looking at zoonotic diseases, the spread of diseases from animal to human, which COVID-19 was. And they were concerned that the environment did not get the same level of concern as economic and social development. And as a result, in Rio +20, there was a document called The Future We Want. And that was the first document that said, I think after 2015, we want the Sustainable Development Goals. We want people to think about sustainability of livelihoods, sustainability of societies, sustainability of the environment, the sustainability of governance and of government. So the Sustainable Development Goals were first mentioned in a UN document, The Future We Want, in 2012. And this was an outcome of the Rio +20 conference in Rio back in 2012. In that document, Professor Jeffrey Sachs, who was a special advisor to Ban Ki-moon at the time, suggested, and Ban Ki-moon, who was the Secretary General at the time, they wanted to see, could we develop something post-2015 that included the SDGs, and we have 3 years of a consultative process. So the UN did the biggest consultative process ever. They went into every country, every household, every NGO, every company, and they asked them about what are the issues that concern them, and what would they like when we talk about sustainability in the economy, or sustainability in society, or environment, or governance. What are we talking about? So there was 3 years of consultation across governments and non-governmental entities. And this was going to be synthesized. But Ban Ki-moon and Professor Jeffrey Sachs says, listen, you know, we do have legal treaties in the UN. We do have the UN Charter. We have good science. We have knowledge of what's good data. We've knowledge. So what SDSN was set up to do, and it was co-chaired with Amina Mohammed at the time, who is now the Deputy Secretary General of the UN. We actually were asked, the academics and lawyers were asked to overview the recommendations that were coming from the bottom-up consultative process, okay? And that was the birth of SDSN. SDSN, then I'm going to describe what happened during the negotiations, but SDSN after negotiations became more like a a think tank into the Secretary General's area. It has 2,000 members. I must give you the members of SDSN to your school, so you know who to contact in India, for example. It might be kind of useful for the students, the different universities, etc. But there's 2,000 members. We have offices, as was said, in New York, Paris, and Kuala Lumpur. And we also, apart from what we call the global network of thought leaders or academics or lawyers, we also do reports. So the Paris office tends to do the happiness report. I don't know whether you've ever seen ranking countries by happiness. Finland is the happiest country, seemingly. We also do ranking of countries by their attainment in the Sustainable Development Goals. And the thing I run at the moment is the SDG Academy. The SDG Academy is free educational resources for those who want to learn about the SDGs. So just to say, I'm going to show you something in a second, that we do have content that's free. So we can give this to your school. We have it on the edX platform, which is like a university platform in America, but we also have all the videos that you can download and use for yourselves for projects and everything. And I'm going to show you an example of that in a second. We also do degrees and professional training in universities. We work with the UN system on things like Mission 4.7 and open education resources. And we do a good bit of thought leadership. So this is writing blogs and publishing and organizing events to remind people that every school has to potentially transform its curriculum to understand how to be kind to nature and kind to people. But it's not just every school, it's also every university, and it's also everybody in the labor force. So we go into governments, we go into companies, we go into all the shops, etc., in the neighborhood, and we ask them to upskill and reskill and try to think about in your everyday activities how you can be kind to nature and how you can be kind to people, and not just in your own locality, but how it impacts people globally. So before I go on to talk about the SDGs, and I know we'll come back to questions, I do want to show you some of the work that I do, and I'm very happy about. So this is the edX platform with all our courses. Yep. With all our courses, and they are free. So this is for maybe the teachers, they can have a look at this, but just to know that any of the content, whether it's the videos or homeworks, they are available in our library, and we can give you the individual videos. So I just want to show you something that we did last year, which was, there was a report by the science panel on the Amazon, which was looking at how do we keep our carbon reserves healthy. And what we did was, instead of doing production in the Amazon, we actually took some drone footage, and we actually took some photographs from the community, and we put it into, I have to share sound, apologies. We actually were able to put a course together. And I just want to play 2 minutes so you actually see the quality that we can produce when we actually put the drone footage and the photographs from the communities together.
At the heart of our planet lies a treasure, the Amazon. It is home to 47 million people, including more than 2 million indigenous individuals, and an irreplaceable wealth of biodiversity. A vibrant tapestry crucial to the planet's climate stability, providing ecosystem goods and services we all depend on. But this vital source of life is at a crossroads. The world's largest rainforest and river system faces unprecedented challenges. Deforestation, degradation, climate change, and criminality threaten to push the Amazon beyond the tipping point, jeopardizing the existence of the forests we know today. Yet, there is still hope. A global network of scientists, activists, and political leaders are building solutions to save the Amazon. Enroll now to learn, understand, and take action. Welcome to the Living Amazon, a first-of-its-kind, free, massive, open online course created by the Science Panel for the Amazon in collaboration with partners. Learn from a diverse array of global experts to discover the importance of the Amazon at both local and global scales. Uncover the threats this incredible region faces and explore the solutions available to protect its extraordinary biodiversity and peoples. Join us as we delve into the science, cultures, and sustainability practices to help shape the future Amazon.
So that was just an example of the type of work I do. So you can see my responsibility is to try and get science into policy and to explain to people what type of work that we have to explain to people what type of work has to be done in practice and policy to implement the science and to protect the Amazon. And of course, the Amazon is our big carbon basin and it releases lots of oxygen. So is the one in the Congo, and so was the one in the Indonesian forest. So they're very, very important to us. So that's why they're sometimes topics in schools, how we actually would protect the carbon basins. Just to go back to, and I won't be too long more, I'm going to go back to the lecture a little bit. The UN is 80 years old, and to be honest, at this moment in time, it's starting to reflect on what's next for the UN. It's certainly going through a process of reform, thinking about the next Secretary General, thinking about what's going to replace or how to extend the SDGs after 2030. So in one way, it's an interesting time. But just to remember that everything in the UN, it goes back to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And in a sense, you know, even following on from Rio +20, and everything that happens since, it's all a continuum. It all is based on past treaties and decisions that have been made in the past. So there is a path dependency in UN thinking that's very alive. But I guess for your classroom at the moment, I'm just going to make an argument about where the SDGs came from, how they're related to the Paris Climate Agreement, how they're related to the coming Montreal Biodiversity Framework, and just to tell you about some of the work programs that are happening in the UN, which is about ensuring education for all. It's about financing for sustainable development, better governance, a better focus on social outcomes, leaving no one behind. And that's all under the umbrella of a thing called Our Common Agenda, which was from 21 to 25. When the consultative process was over, the Secretary General, Ban Ki-moon at the time, handed over all the reports and the census report that SDSN did to two co-facilitators, or two chairs. And one was Ambassador Donoghue of Ireland, representing the Northern Hemisphere, and the other was Ambassador Kamau of Kenya, who represented the Southern Hemisphere. One of the interesting things that happened during these intergovernmental negotiations was the first time they actually allowed what's called the UN major groups to be present in the negotiations. So the UN major groups represented women, they represented young people, academics, they represent universities, they represented unions, corporates or companies, they represented farmers. So there was what we call 12, there was 12 seats at the table for UN major groups. So you might have thought, well, there's 193 countries. So how would 12 seats actually, how could we represent society and our interest groups if we only had 12 seats? The reality is that the UN itself tended to organize the countries into political parties. So what I mean by that is the European Union would have all the members of the European Union, all the countries like the UK and Italy and France, etc. The group of 77 in China would be the African countries in China. The SIDS, small island development states like in the Caribbean and New Zealand and so on, would be in the SIDS regional group. So actually during the 9 months of negotiations, the major groups were able to take one topic and they would try and convince the countries to adopt them in the new document, which we know as Transforming Our World, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, or the SDGs. When I was in New York, I went over to help Jeffrey Sachs with the census report. I actually realized that that was over in November 2014, but then I realized I could stay for 8 months and be part of the negotiations representing the scientific and technology community and academic community. And I sat there for 8 months trying to make a contribution. It wasn't easy. I was trying to say that part of the partnerships has to be science and it has to be the academic community. But again, you're a one-issue desk, and then you can lobby quite effectively, just like the women were able to lobby quite effectively into that document as well. It's a very good document from a stakeholder point of view. Okay, so that's a cartoon representing those negotiations. And just to tell you, what was very interesting about Colombia and Brazil in Rio +20, when they said they want to bring the environmental pillar into the social and economic discussions, there might have been quite a lot of resistance from the rich countries, because the rich countries were the ones that were exploiting nature as a source and sink a lot more aggressively than the poor countries. So there could have been incentives for the rich countries to say, we don't want this agenda. But to be fair, when the agenda was adopted, it was adopted by all countries everywhere. And it was also adopted by all of the major groups, including the local authorities, indigenous people, business, private sector, science and academic community. So basically all people everywhere. And it became what's called a universal agenda. So all countries everywhere had to do it. But the agenda, it's not just at country level, it's to be adopted in schools and universities and local government and national government and regional government and global government. And it's to be adopted in the private sector as well as in the public sector and in civil society at large. And sometimes people think the agenda is just the 17 Sustainable Development Goals and the targets, and that's true. But the actual Transforming Our World 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development has a preamble and a vision and a narrative in its section 1. It has the goals and targets in section 2. It actually has the means of implementation in section 3, and it has the follow-up review in section 4. And I'll come back to those things in a minute. So I just want to give you an idea, and I'll try to just keep it simple for the young people. So in general, this is a lower bound. People were just thinking about the minimum that households and companies and governments should do and what we should do for nature. And it was a consensus document that everyone in the world, all stakeholders agree that these are the goals and targets we should try and achieve by 2030. It's already 25, so we've only 5 years left. But I think at the moment, the momentum is that at 2027, they will start thinking about the post-2030 agenda. And it's very likely they'll recommend to keep the SDGs or some version of the SDGs to go out to 2050. So this agenda will survive. The first 7 goals, I call them MDG pluses. this is the Millennium Development Goals plus. And they very like the goals that were there from 2000 to 2015 under the Human Development Project, but they're household goals. So they basically go, you want to end poverty in all its forms, okay? So this includes ending hunger. You'd be surprised how many children or people go to bed hungry across the world every night, right? You'd be surprised how many people don't go to school, can't get some basic health services. You'd be surprised how there isn't gender equality and there isn't equal status for men and women all over the world. You'd be surprised how access to fresh water isn't there, access to sanitation for all, access to energy. So this is very much when you're in a house at home, these are the basic, if you like, social floors that all humans and all humanity and households should have. And these are what the targets are. When it comes to the economic side, they want economic growth, obviously, but they want to make sure there's good formal jobs and decent jobs and jobs that pay well, etc. They want to promote infrastructures that are sustainable, inclusive and sustainable. So when you're building your roads and your internet systems, etc., they want to reduce any sort of inequalities within and between countries. They want to make safe and resilient and sustainable.
You will form, same form.
Sir, you're not audible, sir.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, now, yes.
Sorry. So when did I become inaudible?
Just from the previous slide.
Previous slide.
From the previous slide. Yes, after
yes.
At the
This
end
one?
of this. Yeah, this one.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
After this slide.
Okay, apologies. Okay, so what I was going to explain is that these are the goals. I'm sure the kids know these goals, right? The 17 Sustainable Development Goals. But the way I think about them is the first 7 are the kind of lower bound or the basic social protection floors that you'd expect people in any home or household to have. So in other words, access to food, access to health, access to education, access to equal rights and opportunity for women and girls and boys, ensure access to water, safe drinking water and sanitation, and ensure that you get affordable energy for your home, whether it's renewable or non-renewable. So it seems like, you know, this is fair enough that every household in the world should have this, but we know that even in countries in Africa, even in today's Africa in 2025, you can still have, you know, 55% of the population going to bed hungry. And it's, so there is still hunger. There are still, you know, lots of problems with children going to school and learning basic maths and basic reading capabilities. So there's still a lot of work to do across the world in ensuring goal 1 to 7 is achieved by households. Goal 8 to 12 is more on the economic pillar, the economic dimension, and it's about ensuring you have economic growth, but economic growth that gives you formal jobs and good jobs and well-paid jobs, good minimum wages, good pensions, etc. And then goal 9 is about governments building resilient and inclusive transportation systems, capital like internet systems and so on. Goal 10 is to make sure income inequality is reduced within country and between country. Goal 11 focuses on cities, that settlements have to be safe, resilient, sustainable. And also goal 12, which is a popular one, is what we call the circular economy, that we have consumption and production of goods and services, that are kind to people and kind to nature. But they're all the economic goals. Then goal 13, 14, and 15 are the environmental goals. And basically it's air, ocean, and land. So we have to, the Paris Agreement, which is bringing our carbon emissions down to net zero by 2050, is actually goal 13 of the SDGs. And then we also have a whole set of biodiversity commitments that came from Montreal last year, where we committed to a lot of things like that 30% of the land and 30% of the marine protected areas would be given back to nature, and that the humans would move away, because we do need nature to regenerate itself. But goal 14 is basically about the oceans and the health of the ocean. You mightn't have known this, but SDG 14, like, it is incredible to think that what I call life, the forests under the sea, particularly beside the marine protected areas that get sunlight, they can produce up to 50 to 70% of the oxygen in the air that we breathe. So you might think you get your oxygen from the trees, but actually you get the oxygen from the ocean as much as you get from the trees. So a healthy ocean is very important, not just for oxygen, but also to store carbon, also to have plenty of fish and the blue economy, as we call it, having plenty of food from the sea. But that's goal 14. Goal 15 is very important as well, to combat desertification. So deserts can spread, but you can also halt the spread of deserts. This is more for the Middle East or in North Africa. But also we are very concerned about the destruction of forests and carbon reserves and land degradation and soil degradation and biodiversity loss. So that's life on land, basically, goal 15. That's a very popular goal with students as well, because obviously they have a big attachment to all animals, including elephants and so on. So that's a very good one. And then 16 and 17 are governance goals, where we want our government to ensure that we have peace, we have good institutions, we don't have corruption, we have accountability, and so on. And the last goal is the one that's surprising, which is multilateralism. There has to be partnership across country to try and achieve all of these goals. So the responsibility isn't just for your own community or your own country, India. You also have responsibility to all your neighbor countries and all the countries around the world. In terms of how you're going to do it, there's a lot of work on raising money to do it, having the technologies to do it, having the data to do it, having the partnerships across countries, having the science, having the new education curriculum, the training of the labor force, and then how exactly you can monitor progress and follow up and review processes. But the great thing about the SDGs is all 193 countries in the UN said yes, without any conditions. All of the stakeholders said yes, including universities and the companies and NGOs and women groups and youth groups. So it was universally accepted, but also the responsibility of implementing the SDGs is all people everywhere, because they're what's called universal to all people everywhere. They're also indivisible, meaning that you should try and achieve all goals simultaneously. So that means that in every action that you do, so you might think, well, I am just, in a school, I'm just a kid in a school, and the parents might think, well, I don't know exactly what sort of influence we have. School managers might go, we don't know what influence we have, but there is this principle of subsidiarity. And what that means is that you should, if you can, be kind to nature or people in some way in everyday actions, whether they're economic actions or any political action, well, then you should try and do it. So you're only responsible for the things that you have control over. But a lot of us have control to a point on how we interact with other people and how we interact with nature and what we can do. So obviously, the more senior you are, or the bigger position of power you have, the more responsibility you have. But this agenda just includes everyone everywhere. And this is why we call it a very inclusive and indivisible agenda. Just to say, the rich countries, this is a ranking of countries by their income. So here are rich countries, let's say like Spain, New Zealand. These are poor countries down here. And you'll see that the rich countries are the ones that are responsible for environmental degradation. So they're the ones that are using nature more and putting pollutants into nature more and have the responsibility to adjust. So they achieve good social outcomes in the sense that their social systems are good for schooling and health, but they're not good on environmental. And this is why this agenda is quite interesting, that all countries everywhere have a lot of work to do. Some of the lower income countries, they don't have so much work to do on the environment, but they have a lot of work to do to make sure all kids go to school and all kids get food and all kids have access to health. But they don't have as much to do on the environment, while it's different for the richer countries. Actually have to be very careful about the quality of water and air and the biodiversity, etc. So I've left a couple of videos that you can watch. And the argument that we'll make today is that, you know, there are challenges out in the world today in terms of biodiversity loss, in terms of climate change, in terms of conflict, in terms of, you know, lots of different challenges. But the argument from the UN is that we do have a plan that for people everywhere, if we all align ourselves to the plan, we can design the future we want. And we call that plan the Sustainable Development Goals, the associated SDG 13 Paris Climate Agreement, and the SDG 14 and 15 coming Montreal Biodiversity Framework. So we basically have the goals and targets. We have the knowledge how to do this, but we do need the political will, and we have to educate people that this is what we have to try and achieve. So I've also left some handles there so that you can contact me, but you have my email and phone number anyway, so that's okay. So just to say, like where we are at the moment. So any sort of study that tries to track, like SDSN has done it, but so has the Secretary General's area and UNDESA. A lot of the goals and targets are not being achieved. Why? Because populations are getting bigger, because different countries are putting plans in place, but maybe haven't been so successful. So for example, in Ireland, we brought in a lot of renewable energies and wind energy, and it was very successful. But then we brought in a lot of data companies for AI, and which use an awful lot of energy. So in terms, our consumption of energy has gone up a lot. So even though we reduced the use of fossil fuel, unfortunately, our carbon emissions are still as high as they used to be. So it's not an easy project to bring down the carbon emissions. It's not an easy project to look after. It's not an easy project to look after nature, all the animals. It's not an easy project to make sure there's no conflict and that everyone gets food, everyone gets access to health and education. But the good news is that all the countries in the midpoint review, which was co-facilitated by Ireland and Qatar, everyone signed up to this again, saying they're recommitting to the goals. Everyone is committing to these goals post-2030. So they know that this is a possibility for the world, and we have to work towards this. And then one thing before I open it up to questions is that, you know, you might think that when things are, what I would say, I'm an old person, and my CV, what you've seen is the successes in my CV, which the chairman read out, but it only took him 10 minutes. I've lived for nearly 60 years. not 10 minutes. And what he didn't read out was all the challenges, was all the failures. That's a much longer CV, right? But the only thing I would say to you is that, and particularly for the SDG project, you know, and it's like, think of a game of football. When you win a game of football, you know, everyone gives glory to the person who scores the goal or the people who win the game. But actually, if you look back in the game, when it was going badly, it's the defenders and the goalkeeper who kept you in the game. That when things were difficult, is that when people stepped up and worked hard when it was difficult, that was the foundation for success. And I actually think around the world, people are working for peace. They are working for sustainable development. They're putting in those foundations, and there will be success in the future. But so this is the time for everyone to work hard, to be ambitious, to be hopeful, and that will ensure that this agenda will succeed. So I'm going to take any questions you have. And apologies to young people if this looked complicated or the language was hard to understand. But ask me questions now and I will explain them to you.
So that was a great presentation, sir. And it was not hard for them to understand. It was quite suitable for the students who could just understand that. So it's just like a drop in the ocean. So wherein the sustainable development goals which we have to work towards is how you explained. So it's not possible to achieve 100%. So it starts from one. So let this also be an effort from the school side. There are students who have joined, there are parents who have joined, the teachers, and so we all would like to work towards the sustainable development goals as well. So now I request the students to join for any questions or any clarifications. So please join. Teachers also can ask for any doubts you have. So you have a wonderful material online available, which can be accessed by the teachers as well, as you have said just now. So it will be of much use for the teachers as well as the students also have so many courses which are really interesting for them, which will help them out for the future as well. Okay, others, please, if anyone would like to ask any doubts, please join. Yeah, you can just on your mic as well and question. So a question which I have seen just now is regarding are the courses free is what they say.
Yeah. So the way we do the courses is that on the edX platform, which is a Harvard MIT platform, I'll give you the website. The courses are free. Just to say though, there is certification. If you want certification, it can be $10, $20, but you don't have to do certification. You can just stop it. But what we encourage people to do though, and you can contact me, is that you can come into our library where you can actually choose, like every course has, you know, maybe 30 or 40 lectures or 15-minute videos, but we have 2 million minutes of views in our library where you can just download the actual MP4 and then you can use it for yourselves, right? So the point is that, and they are free, right? So you can repurpose and use. And then today, I think that probably some of the students are well able to edit MP4s and translate it into different languages. They can do anything you want with it, but they are free. But I'll show you after this talk. I will share with you exactly how you potentially can get on the edX, which is fine. But and that's, the teachers might want to do full courses, but other people might just want to pick and choose a particular video that's of interest to them or their project, and that's how you use the library, and I'll show you how to do that as well. Yeah, but they're free. They're definitely free.
So I have a copy of the presentation as well as you have shared.
Yeah.
So there are great many details in that, which I can share with the students, whoever require that. And as well as your video, as we have it right now, is being recorded. So it shall be sent to the students as well. They can just access it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyone else would like to if you have any sort of doubts, you can just
Yeah, I have something to ask. So this is a question we are from an engineering college where our students are in the first year. They learn about SDGs and they try to do a small, provide a small technical solution to one of those SDGs. So that is like we call it engineering exploration through sustainability. So that is how the students try to learn and learn about sustainability and also just explore about engineering. Now, one thing, when UN has designed these SDGs and they've formulated the list of SDGs, the implementation of solutions for these SDGs sustainable goals, would they be everyone should try to design solutions to that, or was there any plan about the solutions for these? Was there any plan?
Yeah, very good. Yeah. So the first thing is the Secretary General, Tony Guterres, is an engineer, and he did actually set up a council of engineers that SDSN looks after under UNIDO. So if you do have engineering solutions, I can give you the address for the Council of Engineers to consider, because they synthesize and put those solutions together for the Secretary General, and they try to disseminate them across countries. Okay. But the point you're making, though, is more serious in the sense that, you know, these are goals which are created by, let's say, politicians in some respects, or diplomats, and they're good goals and targets. And the UN itself has a way of following up on what we call, let's call it, following up on progress. And they try to produce these sort of reports, like the engineers would produce a report, or the Secretary General's advisory board, the scientists, they call it the SAB, or they might do it in the SDI forum, etc. But this is all about trying to share knowledge across country, and it's okay, but it's quite synthesized and quite high level. But actually, what if you read the Transforming Our World 2030 agenda does, it says that how the SDGs are implemented nationally is really up to the Indian government, right? And they've asked the government to produce what's called voluntary national reviews, voluntary VNRs they're called, which India has done, of course. But within that, they try to get the government to do these what's called whole of government, whole of society approaches, but also within that, to set up some sort of reward for solutions. You know what I mean? So there is a bit of an onus within India or within your state to actually, when solutions come, to try and disseminate them more kind of nationally. That's what I'm trying to say. But that's a bit tricky, obviously. But all I could tell you is that definitely with clever engineering solutions, we certainly could put them to the Council of Engineers. That's a good one. There is a global sustainable development report done every 4 years, which synthesizes science for the science policy interface. And you can submit these results to that committee. It's a committee of independent scientists. So, for example, in 2027, the scientist producing the report, the co-chair is Phoebe Conturi, and she's SDSN. She's the chair of SDSN Europe. So if you do have these type of solutions and you can write them in a small kind of policy brief, as we call it, or a couple of pages, like there are ways to submit them to be considered to be scaled up, right? So one thing you could look up, there's a thing called the it's very kind of funny name, Technology Facilitation Mechanism, TFM. And there's a platform for IP or intellectual property or ideas. and it's run by private companies and governments, but they're always looking for people to post a potential idea. But you probably should put an intellectual property or a patent on it, and then you post it, and then to see whether they want to invest or scale it or things like that. So that platform exists, and they look at this in the Science Technology Innovation Forum every May, etc. Right? So there are, with very clever and very simple, like the cleverest things are sometimes the simplest things. You know, there's ways of thinking about how you disseminate that into the UN system, which I would understand. But you probably, if you thought about it, there's probably ways to disseminate that into the state or the Indian government. They probably have some pathway somewhere where you can actually, like in Ireland, for example, we have the Young Scientist Awards or the Young Environmental Awards, or I don't know whether these things exist in India, but, or maybe you should create them. But that's, so yeah, that's a long way of answering your question, but I hope that's okay. Yeah.
Yes, it is. I got the answers.
As far as India is concerned, we have right from the schools, we are having adult tinkering labs wherein the students are made to experiment on many things, and as well as coming to our school as such, we celebrate these Earth Days and Water Day and all, and we give them a challenge to make out a project regarding that. And also government also has other hackathons and all which are conducted at the school level as well as the college level, wherein the students experiment and innovate and find out solutions for sustainable development goals as well. So this is
Very
how
good.
it's going on in India.
Oh, yeah, very good.
Yeah, students can please take over. Any question?
Yeah, there's no question. You can ask me anything. It doesn't even have to be about the Sustainable Development Goals. So it can be about careers, it can be about football, whatever you think is of interest, any question at all.
Sir, how do the goals for environment, economy, and society balance each other in the SDGs?
Oh, that's a very good question. Okay, so it's Laxmi. Am I pronouncing your name right? Okay, so going back in time, if we go back to the 50s and 60s, and we talked about development, we only talked about economic development. And at the time, people used to say, when we're talking about development, we go, how do we take a country, maybe like Ireland, for example, in the 1950s, that was basically agriculture. How do you take a country that's just agrarian? How do you create agribusiness? How do you diversify into manufacturing, into traded export or manufacturing for export? How do you create financial services and international traded financial services? So they talked about the economy had to go up the value chain and had to diversify. And that's what development was. And it was all about gross domestic product, or GDP, like how much dollars can you create with your production of goods and services. Now, the economists could have been criticized and saying, well, okay, that's money, but what does that mean for society? And the economists would answer, listen, there's no way you can generate a lot of money from companies if you don't have a skilled labor force. So we need healthy labor. We need people who are working. The workers have to be healthy. They have to be fed. They have to be educated. They have to have high skills. The roads have to be there. The government can't be corrupt. So in some ways, if you achieve high GDP, it's because your society and your labor force is strong. It's because your government and your government supports is strong. So why are we talking about thinking about society and thinking about economy or environment, etc.? But the problem is, if it was Amartya Sen, the Nobel Prize winner from India, who pointed out, yeah, but if you go in country by country, you start to see a disconnect between society and you start to see with economy. And what he tried to do was, actually his term was, income or money is only a means to an end. What really is important is what you do with the money. right? So he used to talk about, you know, how do we turn money in an economy into good social outcomes? So he wants to measure participation rates in schools, learning in schools, access to health services. He wanted to see people with clean water and sanitation. He wanted to see people with good nutrition and so on, right? So he elevated societal outcomes to be the main outcome, actually, in the sense that it's no point having income if you don't actually translate that into good social outcomes for all people and all the households everywhere, okay? So there was still connects between economy and society coming up to 2015. But I guess then the next step was, you know, both society, meaning households and companies, were using nature for free, like water and natural resources, and they were using it for free to get rid of their waste, pollutants. And that was okay when nature had its own absorptive capacity, but humanity got so big and so intensive in its production of manufacturing and animal farming that suddenly we started to overburden nature. So we cannot take nature, we can't take it for free anymore, that we have a healthy ocean, a healthy food system from land sustainability, and a healthy climate. We can't take that as a given anymore. So it's a very good question about the status in this project of economic, society, and environment. But the whole project says the triple bottom line, as they call it, is that success means sustainable livelihoods, sustainable societies, and sustainable environment. Because, you know, if one of those falls, you don't have anything. There's no point us being successful at economics and even societal level if we destroy nature, because then we don't have air to breathe, we don't have food to eat, we don't have water to drink, right? So it's a very good question. This project gives equal status to those outcomes and wants us to achieve prosperity, but achieve it by actually building social protection floors for everyone. And it also wants us to stay within what we call planetary boundaries, in the sense that we have to have a natural system that can sustain life for future generations. Yeah. So what you've got there is the essence of this project, actually. But I think you're right to say, you know, out in your world, or the world that we go out to, there seems to be a prioritization of economics, right? And that maybe society is second and maybe nature is third. And I give you a very sad thing in a way, but I thought it was nice in one way. When you go into the General Assembly Hall, there's 193 nations with all their delegates. There's some seats for stakeholders and observers, but there's actually one seat, only one seat at the top corner, in the very top corner at the back. And that's ICUN, but that represents nature. So in all of these discussions in the UN, you know, nature, like elephants and air, they have a say, but it's only one seat, one person. And they have to shout over everyone. Do you know what I mean? And that's the problem. The problem is you sense there's a prioritization of economic wealth over societal outcomes and over nature. But I guess what this project is saying, though, and it's a very simple thing, you know, if people are only concerned about money and money for themselves, it can be done at the cost of other people and of nature. And at the end of the day, you know, this is not sustainable. This is not sustainable for future generations, right? And what's a better solution is that if people can learn not just to care about themselves, but to care about others and nature, suddenly you have 8 billion people on the planet, or 9 billion people caring about you and your children's rights to sustainable development. And that's just a better model. That's a win-win for everyone. Ironically, we could end up in a situation where we don't have to. Yes, go ahead. Do you want to ask a question?
There are some questions in the chat box.
Oh, yeah. Anyway, the point that I was trying to make is that, you know, give you an example of robots. So a lot of people might think the big tech companies are going to have robots doing all the jobs and we're going to be unemployed.
The paradise. The paradise.
But there's another way, which is if you're in sustainability, you could say, well, actually the workers, because a lot of the research for robots is done in universities, which are done by taxpayers' money or people or the public's money, that maybe individuals should own the robots. It's like in Norway, when they found oil, they gave a share of ownership of the oil to everyone and future people as well. So if I own the robots, then the income from those robots would make sure I could be 3 days leisure or doing nothing, and then I could do work for 2 days, right? So this project, if you really care about societal outcomes, care about how money is diverted into protecting humanity and protecting nature, you actually can have outcomes where you're actually richer, and the quality of air and the quality of your food and the quality of water is actually very high. So that's basically what we're trying to fight for. But greed and selfishness and people pushing agendas, you know, for economic growth can actually create a problem where there's a big disconnect, where economics is first, then you see a lot of people not benefiting from that in society, a lot of people quite poor, and left behind, and certainly nature can be quite destroyed. So that's the essence of the project. Is there other questions? Oh yeah, there's loads of questions. So here we go.
Thank you for sharing your insights with us, sir. So I wanted to ask a question, that is, according to your view, which sustainable developmental goals is the most urgent to focus today?
Yeah. So for me, okay. So for me, all the goals are important. That's for sure. And they kind of have come at a package, and you have to try and achieve them all together. But it's how you do this is quite important. And the two things that I work on quite a lot, one is on education. So these are what's called the means of implementation, or the enablers, right? So working on education, making sure people in preschool and at different levels of primary or K-12 or secondary school or elementary school or high elementary, and then going into universities, but also people in government and people in corporates, etc., have to learn how to live with people and nature. Because even the most brilliant CEOs, the ones with the best jobs and all the degrees, most of them have not learned how to live with nature and society, right? So I think professional training and education is very, very important for this project to succeed. I also think partnerships are important, in the sense that when schools across the world, or when universities across the world, or governments across the world, or even corporations, when we cooperate together and we try to implement the SDGs, we can be more successful. So I guess my answer to you is, it's not that I pick a particular goal. I think they're all very important. Maybe SDG 17, the partnership one, is very important. But the key thing is that maybe how we achieve these goals is also important. So creating the money, the education and training, having the right technologies, having the right partnerships. So to focus on how to implement the goals, and those instruments are actually, you know, what I focus on. But I don't particularly have a favorite goal. Well, this is the problem, because SDG 1, I don't want anyone to go to bed hungry, right? Or I don't want anyone to be living in any form of poverty. SDG 2 is nutrition. I want everyone to have full nutrition. I want everyone to have healthcare. I want everyone to have schooling and education. I want everyone to not experience discrimination or gender inequality. I want everyone to access clean water and sanitation. I want everyone to have good energy. I want everyone with good jobs, good infrastructures. I want everyone to be responsible in their consumption and production, to live in nice cities, have clean air, clean water, land that's nutritious and sustainable. And I want everyone to live in peace, etc. So what's great about the SDGs is that they're all, I would call, basic, in the sense that every one of them, humanity everywhere should be having them as a kind of a lower bound or a limited expectation. But anyway, so all goals, I want them achieved. But I do like education as an instrument and partnership as an instrument. And of course, nothing can be done without money and technology, but that's a by the way. I think, so hopefully that answers your question. But the goals are, if you're going for a UN interview, the goals are universal and indivisible. Indivisible means that they all have to be achieved simultaneously, and that you cannot try to achieve one without the other or you will fail, right? So that's the whole idea, that they are a package and you do them all together simultaneously. As hard as that sounds, it is possible, of course. Great question, though.
So I would like to ask a question.
Yeah,
So
go ahead.
with the 2030 deadline for the SDGs fast approaching, like what is the single most important skill or mindset as a student that I should have so that I could solve the global problems, and I should not just talk about it, I should get to solve those problems.
Yeah. So the reality is that we are not, when SDSN measured across country the achievement of the different 169 targets, we're only 17% achieved. So that means we're not making a huge amount of progress. But what I would say, though, is that there is progress in that a lot of schools, universities, governments, corporates, they have started to make plans to implement or achieve the SDGs. So I still think that, even though we're struggling to have impact or an outcome, I do believe that governments and corporates and civil society and schools and universities, they are starting to think about and to plan how to achieve the goals. And that's good news. It's not good enough, but it's good news. The UN is also saying, well, let's have no more planning and no more goal setting. Let's get into implementation. And I think that's important as well. But I guess when you ask me what's the most important thing is mindset. And even for a young person, the mindset is that, and which is the belief that you have to have in the goals, is that the reality is that when in my everyday life as a student or someone who goes to work or someone who will live in India in the future, that I depend on other people and nature. Right? I don't know whether you sometimes look at water and you kind of go, water existed before our solar system. It's older than the solar system. And somehow it came to us as a finite resource. Now you can, with chemistry, create H2O, but actually it's very dangerous. It can actually explode, and it could take ages just to get a glass of water. So it is a finite resource. It's a resource that's been on this planet for billions of years, and it just goes through all life. It's gone through the dinosaurs, it's gone through us, it's gone through all the trees, the plants. It just keeps recycling. So it's a miracle. Water is kind of a miracle, right? But the reality is that the ocean system and creating fresh water is a one planet system. And we have to understand that as a humanity, we have to look after that. We have to look after where oxygen comes from. We have to look after our food systems. But even in our economic activities, we produce our clothes, we produce our goods and services and so on. So the reality is the mindset is that you do coexist and depend on other people and nature. And to understand that can give you quite a bit of gratitude for that. And that means that as you go forward and you live your everyday life, you might be more conscious that if I'm in a company or university or at home, that I have to take actions that actually you know, pay back, if you like, or respect, or make sure that you're not doing any harm, or you're trying to create a positive impact on other people and on nature. So I think the most important thing that can come during your education and school is that sort of mindset. It's that type of mindset to understand that I coexist with nature and other people, and I am going to be a force that ensures that there's positive synergies between, you know, how I live my everyday life and how I impact other people and nature. And if you do that and everyone else does that, then it's going to be a much better world. So I think that's the key message with the SDGs, is that everyone is important, and that just to realize that you coexist with people and nature, and what actions you can take to create those positive linkages, if you like, to nature and to people in your everyday life. Maybe that's too technical an answer, but was that the question? What's the most important thing to learn? I think it was, right? The most
Yeah,
important thing to learn.
it was.
Yeah. Very good.
Thank you, sir.
Great question.
So what are the advanced technologies which can be used to obtain these goals?
You asked me, is it what technologies we can use? Is that it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So there was a very good question again. There was a very famous Harvard professor, who I can't remember his name after calling him famous, but he wrote a book called Half Earth. He was basically into biodiversity. I think his name was E.O. Wilson. I think so. But his idea is that humans had to give half of the oceans and half of the landmass to nature and stay off it. And then he said, we've a chance that we can feed 9 billion people. We can have good oxygen. We can have good ecosystems for everyone. Okay. And now that's a difficult thing for humans to be told, you know, half of the earth and half of the ocean, this is for nature and you have to stay away. But that's, if you look even at the biodiversity frameworks, they are telling us to give nature back 30%. I mean, that's generally the goal, 30% to land, 30% to marine protected areas. So that sort of idea is there. But I'm mentioning him because he answered your question. He goes, the problem with humanity, if I can remember it, he says, you know, we have kind of caveman primal fears, if you know what I mean by that. Like we're humans and we all fear things. We all have primal instincts in a sense. We have institutions that are medieval, like in the sense that, like, we have technology now where we could actually have governance and people could turn up to a parliament every minute, but somehow we elect people to turn up in person into a parliament. So these are kind of medieval institutions. But what he said, though, is that we have godlike technology. So we're kind of primal people with quite weak institutions, but we have godlike technologies. And this is a dangerous thing for humanity. And to answer your question is that every piece of technology can be used for good and it can be used for bad. This is the irony, right? So John F. Kennedy, in his peace speech a long time ago, he was the first Irish kind of American president. He talked about the ability for humanity with nuclear bombs to kill each other in a second, but also the ability for humanity to solve all forms of poverty and have peace in the world, right? And it does come down to how you use technology. And the one that we're all thinking about at the moment, of course, is AI and digital technologies. And the UN, in the Pact for the Future, for the first time, has a digital global compact. It came up with how countries should regulate or should own, and how that technology could be used to achieve the SDGs, for example, right? Because at the moment, we're seeing that technology being used for economic reasons, for war, for other things. But in theory, I think you could imagine that every school in the world could have digital resources and could use AI as a teacher and could use it. So there's no excuse for kids not going to school, because even if there isn't a beautiful school like you have and all the resources, like surely you can do it online and you could self-educate with the right educational resources and the right AI teacher, for example, right? But people have to put money and investment into those technologies to achieve it. So the frustrating thing about achieving all the goals is there is a science technology innovation forum, which I talked about. One of the teachers is at Divya was talking to me about the engineers both. So there is a science technology innovation forum, but a lot of us are saying, like, are we not developing science technology innovation for the SDGs? Because you can see it, how to make intensive animal farming more productive, or how to, I don't know, make fossil fuel more efficient, or, you know, you can see a lot of drones for use in warfare. You can see a lot of technology being deployed for money, for military reasons, but somehow we have to be able to say, governments have to be able to say to the universities and everyone, look, if we are putting research and development into science and technology, we have to innovate for global public goods. We have to be able to generate technology which is actually sharing that technology across the world. For example, the COVID vaccine was not shared across the world. That was a disgraceful thing that happened. That was taxpayers' money creating a solution for a vaccine, and then it wasn't shared, for example. So your question is very, very important. So the thing I'm trying to say to you is that, you know, the technology is there, but you've got to orientate it towards the SDGs, and you've got to get young people who are interested in digital transformation or interested in engineering or technology to actually develop the tech for social good, right? And that probably means working with lawyers and licensing to make sure you have what's called Creative Commons licenses. In other words, that it cannot be used commercially. It can be used by everyone for the public good. It cannot be used for like war or reasons to do with that are unethical. But the world at the moment is not orientated that way. But I agree with you that these godlike technologies, if they had the right licensing and orientation and funding, they could apply themselves to achieving peaceful and sustainable development pathways. This is absolutely possible. And it's up to each and every one of us to be public servants and servants of the public good. So when we do invent something, rather than selling it to a company that wants to commercialize it, we go, no, I actually want to give this to everyone. I want people to use it. Does that answer your question a little bit?
Yes,
You can, yeah. Yeah, very good. Lots of questions. Any more questions? Oh, look at all these. There's more.
Hello, sir. This is Dr.
Hello.
Asit Kumar Parida, sir. Today I'm working as an associate professor at Nallamala Reddy Engineering College, sir. So my
Very
question
good.
is, sir, what are the best way so that we can motivate our students so that they can think that global sustainability challenges through the lens of SDGs?
The motivation.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
How we can
So,
motivate our students so that they can think over that global
yeah.
sustainability challenges?
Yeah. So I think, you know, I think the question you ask is, like, again, is very, very fundamental. And to me, it starts with the statutes and mission statements of the entities that you work for. So, for example, in the school you go to, the university you go to, the corporate you go to, I mean, you can define a mission statement. Now, if your mission statement is for profit or for money only, I mean, that is going to influence how everything is done. It's going to influence how you allocate your money, how you measure progress, how you incentivize people to achieve those targets. And really what has to happen, and this is why people like me, I'm an economist, but I've become to realize that governance is actually very, very important in this project. So people talk about, the triple bottom line of economy, society, environment, but governance is actually very, very important. And it comes from your mission statement, and then it comes from your planning and your KPIs and how you incentivize these things, right? So obviously, a school could say PISA scores and STEM is the best thing ever. And we give all the prizes to all the kids who get the highest scores in STEM, and then they go into universities, and that determines how good a school we are, right? On the other hand, if there are universities starting to create pathways for people who are not just, like, let's say, non-STEM skills, suddenly if you give prizes and pathways and you build success, not on those indicators, but on another set of sort of indicators or achievement, well, then that changes everything, right? So like in China or the US and a bit in Ireland now, like people will give access to university because they're good sports people, because they're good at chess, or they're good at, all these other things. So why not, which we have in University College Dublin, why not build pathways for people who won Young Environmental Awards, who come from disadvantaged backgrounds? Why not give them a pathway to come into the university to show what they can do on their dimensions and what they're passionate about, right? So it all comes back to the public service and your value for the global public good. And you're absolutely right that the system, in a sense, has to start rewarding your thinking and application. So it's great as if you do it as an individual, but it's much easier if your board of governance and teachers and parents and everyone is saying, look, we take equal joy in achievement on a lot of just non-STEM activities, and to make sure that when you achieve on these, that there is a pathway to success in terms of getting into a university or getting into a job or getting into government, etc. So in a sense, governments as well have to encourage the population and young people. Like, if you go on this journey, there will be success, and there will be points at which you can enter particular jobs, particular universities, and so on. So it is tricky, but there needs to be a reform of mission and a reform of what success means, and how you define it, and how you measure, and how you celebrate it. Yeah.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Great question again.
So what happens if one sustainable development goal is ignored? How does that affect others?
Yeah, very good question. So unfortunately, this is the problem. When the consultative process happened, and everyone, was asked to think about what their important issue was, they were also asked to think about issues that had important linkages, meaning that, if you fail in one, you potentially fail in all. And this is a problem, so if let's say SDG 13, let's say for some reason we're going to fail in carbon emissions, that we're not able to reduce them. And let's say the world goes, it's 1.5 at the moment, but let's say it goes up to 2 Celsius, or it warms up to 2.5 or 3 Celsius. The problem is the weather is going to become so unpredictable that it can destroy ports, for transportation systems. It can destroy houses. It can destroy all sorts of things very easy. So in other words, if you fail to achieve one, you're very likely to fail. You're going to fail to achieve all of them. I'm just going to take a drink of water. And the thing, I guess, that makes this a hard job, and this is where humans have to, in some sense, be count on their intellectual capability is to say, like, there's two types of problems here. One is we can't see carbon in the air, and we can't see what's happening in the ocean. So if the ocean is warming, if the ocean is losing its coral reefs, if the ocean is losing its fish stock and is actually becoming contaminated, we don't see that. And if we don't see it, maybe we don't think it's a problem. And the same with carbon in the air. We don't see the concentration increasing, so we think it's a problem. So humans have to trust science. We have to go, the scientists are telling us that this is what's happening to our ocean and to our air, so we have to believe them and we have to take corrective measures. The other problem is that things are okay up to a tipping point. So I don't know if you've ever tried to care for a plant or something in your house. It can take quite, like when you don't water it or feed it or give it sunlight, it can take quite a lot of, let's say, abuse. But there becomes a point when it dies and you cannot restore it. And unfortunately, the planetary system is a little like this, is that humans will let things go because we don't see it or we think we've capabilities to reverse it. But if we let it get to a tipping point, we may not be able to reverse it. So what scientists are telling us is that we have to do it now. We can't wait 20 years. We can't wait 30 years. We got to do it now, because now it's reversible, but it will not be reversible if we keep pushing it, right? So that's kind of the problem, that humans are asked to maybe understand what they don't see. It's not in their face, and it's not something that's urgent for them, but it will be urgent for their children or them when they get older. And this is a complexity of this project, right? But I guess the answer I think you asked is there one goal that we cannot achieve and still achieve the others? Well, I think with nature, we need to achieve the nature goals, that's for sure. Can we put up with some lack of prosperity? Maybe. Can we put up with a lack of, societal benefits? Maybe. And a lack of good governance? Maybe. But so I guess we certainly have to achieve the environmental goals. But in the end of the day, to achieve the environmental goals, we need money, good economy, we need technology, we need good governance, we need a whole, world family working together to actually make those changes so that we have a safe operating space for us and all other animals. So I think if I remember, the question was, can we drop one goal? And the answer is probably not. We have to try and achieve them all simultaneously. But it is politically, it's a difficult thing, and people have to be very educated and trust science and to be able to achieve these goals. Yeah. Good question.
Thank you, sir.
Any more?
Yeah, we had a great session, sir. We had the pearls of wisdom you shared with us were wonderful. So the students, whoever were attending, I think most of them really enjoyed the session, and you had also cleared many of their doubts as well. So I hope they also are the future torch bearers for solving the for reaching the sustainable development goals. So thank you very much for your session, sir. Yeah. So so there were many questions which were posed. So you can also mail the questions as well if you want. I can share
share the questions with me afterwards and I can answer them. They're very good. Yeah,
I can share them, sir. So thank you very much, first of all, for sparing a lot of time for us and a lot of insights which you have really shared apart from whatever was the presentation. So we had a lot of based on.
I want to meet your father.
Yeah, Lasya, come ahead.
Lasya, go ahead. Go ahead. She wants to make a final point, did she?
Yeah,
Lasya,
let her make.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
So just to say, I think on our SDG Academy courses, when we do analytics, India is one of the bigger users, which is good news. And of course, the population is one of the biggest countries in the world. And people obviously, you know, a lot of the success of this project is going to depend on India, let's face it, and China and the big countries adopting to this. So I do think that leadership coming from China and India in particular, obviously Europe and hopefully the United States eventually, and Africa, of course. But leadership from India is going to be really important because you actually have a lot of the science and you have a lot of the intellect to actually do this. So, yeah, so this is people should not feel that this is not going to be important, because I think it's probably the most important thing that India does this, and people can drive this. You'd be surprised how successful you could be if you want to do this. Yeah.
Yeah, they'll also be interested in working towards these sustainable development goals as well, right from the school age. So which will really have a great impact on the development as well. And the courses whichever you have shared, I'll just have one more session with the students as well, and I'll just explain them regarding this. So there is one message finally, sir. What is one message or piece of advice you'd like to share with students like us who wish to make a global impact? Is the last question what they ask.
That's a easy question. No, it's not an easy question. Yeah, I guess you know, this might sound, you can tell me whether this is good advice or not, right? But often when you get older, people ask you, what advice would you have given yourself? You know what I mean? What advice would you, if you could go back in time and you could go back to your younger self, what advice would you have given that person like yourself at a younger age to ensure success, etc., right? And to be honest with you, when I think about that, I think what's needed for this project is that I think it'd be nice to be able to go back to your younger self and actually thank your younger self, in the sense that they become the superhero because for some reason they decided to take the decisions that gave future generations and you a life and something that was important. So I do think that it's like the time is now, and whatever age you are, like to actually really feel that you are the one has to be the if you like, the superhero in a sense. And you know, in 20 or 30 years time, you look back and you will thank yourself and actually say, well, actually, that person at that time really, even though it was hard, I'm sure everyone, believe me, everyone in life has difficulties with health, with family, like there's lots of challenges, but somehow at a young age you were able to navigate them and to overcome them and build the foundation for the future. And this is how success is built in some ways. So so what I would say is that as a young person in particular, you know, you will have challenges, you will have different pressures, but to actually back yourself and to say, what I do now in my schooling, what I do now for my community and so on, will build my future. And my future self will thank me. So I think that's the attitude to have. And to be honest with you, it's nearly the burden that my generations have put on younger generations. That they have to be the superhero that fixes these problems, and they will be, because that's what happens. Every generation fixes the problems of the previous generation. That's what happens. Yeah.
Hello, sir. Hello.
Hello.
Yeah.
Do you want one more question? Go ahead.
Yeah. Yes, sir, can you share the journey from your childhood to London School of Economics?
Yeah.
And then to UN?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, this is a very good question. And yeah, I don't know. Okay. I tried to do it as briefly as possible, right? So I don't like, I think I told this story before somewhere else, but in Ireland, there was a law where a woman, upon marriage, had to give up her job because our constitution protected the right of the woman not to work and to bring up a family, okay? Now, when we joined the European Commission or the European Community, they brought in directives for gender equality, and we had to get rid of those laws. And Mary Robinson was very important in the European courts to make sure that there was gender equality. For me, my mother was very educated, and she was a statistician in the government. And my father was actually a kind of a sports star. Like, he played for an amateur thing we call hurling. So the problem is that it's fine for my mother to fall in love with my father. The only problem is she had to give up her job, and he was poor, like, even though he was kind of famous from playing sport. So hence we were poor, basically, as a result of this marriage. But my mother and her family always said to me, you need to go to university. Like, that was the mindset. It was just, education is just so important. Like, it doesn't matter what you do or where you live or what's your story at the moment, you need to go to university. So for whatever reason, I wasn't from a good neighborhood. I wasn't from, it was a poor neighborhood. But in my mind, from my mother's side of the family, I was going to go to university, right? So when it came to we have national exams, when it came to them, again, I was a bit lucky because with some of the universities, including University College Dublin, has a matriculation, which is a separate exam to the state exam. But I did okay in the matriculation, and I came to University College Dublin to do a history degree, okay? Then during the history degree, I realized I wasn't good at English, actually. But I actually learned that I was good at maths and I was good at economics. So I transferred to economics, and I did a master's in economics in University College Dublin. And then I had some kind professors who told me, why don't you apply to do a PhD? And actually one of them gave me a lectureship in UCD for a year. And I used that year to apply to American universities, So I think I got into Chicago with Sargent, but I thought dynamic optimization was just crazy, macroeconomics. But I liked the London School of Economics because it was more left-wing, and it worked a lot on labor economics and things like this. So that's why I went to the center, what was called the Center for Labor Economics, or now called the Center for Performance, and I did my PhD there. And my thing was about the interaction of product and labor markets. I was just always interested how money made from business was shared with workers. Basically, that was my thesis, right? But the rest of my story is very much a random walk, because when I was in that Center for Labor Economics, or the Center for Economic Performance, the people I played football with, because I used to play sport, soccer, they told me why when the wall fell in Eastern Europe in 1989, 1990, they asked me, would I not do some transition economics, which I did. And we talked about social security systems in Poland, etc. But then the same people later said, well, why don't we do development economics? And I started to work on Thailand and other things with the World Bank. And then eventually I just got interested in development, and I met James. And then he said, well, why don't we work on training people for his Millennium Villages? And then after working with Jeffrey Sachs on that, they asked me, well, we should set up SDSN, which is the Sustainable Development Solution Network, which happened in 2007, etc. So my life is a bit of a random walk where in some ways my path seemed to be, you know, I was going to university, but then I would say kind mentors and professors kept nudging me and say, why don't you do this? Why don't we do this? And I've just followed my nose in terms of that. How did I end up in New York with Jeffrey Sachs doing the census report? Well, that's okay. I think we worked together already on the Millennium Development Goals. I should have said my story though is that I always even in industrial economics, I always, after LSE, I went back to Trinity College Dublin. And then afterwards, I switched to University College Dublin again because I wanted to do development. But I think one key thing in what I've done all my life, though, is that I've always been attracted to public service. I have never worked for a private company. I have never worked for profit. I have never engaged in consultancy or anything like this that would actually just be a pure benefit for money, right? Now, I don't know why that was in my DNA, but it was in my DNA, right? So I do think that when I started, people offered me things like the Social Protection Project in Poland, or the NEED project in Thailand, or the Millennium Development Villages in Africa, or the Sustainable Development Goals, that I was always eager to try and understand the pursuit of public service and the public good. And that's what took me through my journey. Does it mean I'm rich? No. Do I get to meet everyone around the world? Yes, you know, but yeah, so I think that's my journey, but that doesn't have to be your journey. There's so many different journeys, but I guess I'm now thinking about the next phase. And I don't know whether somebody's going to knock on the door again, or whether I finally have to say, what do I want to do? Let's say when I'm over 60, like what is my next thing? I don't know. Maybe I finally have to make that decision rather than somebody tapping me on the shoulder and saying, would you not consider this, right? So, and I think that is a life lesson that you can have plans, and it's good to have plans, and it's good to have goals and targets, but you also have to be flexible in the sense that when opportunities come along, you take them. And then the other life lesson I would say is that there has been failures. Like there are things that I have somehow applied for and didn't get, but somehow the thing that came next was better. So sometimes rejection is a good thing. You know, it means that you're not suited to that and that you need to move on to the next thing. So so life is a bit of a random walk like that. I don't know, am I answering your question a little bit? Well, anyway, that's my story, that I basically drifted into all of these things. But I had kind professors pointing out opportunities and giving me guidance at different points. And I've been lucky that way. But the point is, though, I have been very open to public service and global public goods. I've never been that open to just wanting to work in corporates or to make money. I've never been open to that. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. It was very inspiring.
Yeah.
Sir, I have a question.
Okay.
Okay, so how can current students get into policy making?
Yeah. So again, this is a big project or a big question, right? So there was in the Pact for the Future, it is worth looking at the Youth Declaration. It's in Annex 1. And I think that's a good document for the aspiration of, let's say, youth and their representation in policy, right? So the reality is that there are the Greta Thunbergs of the world who, you know, will demonstrate outside the government, and that's fair enough. I mean, we do need civil society movements, and we do need demonstrations and people to demand things, right? But there's another side as well, where government is not just the legislative. Like there is what's called the legal side or the juracy side. So some of the young people in Ireland, for example, got solicitors and they sued the government for not meeting their climate, their Paris objectives. So they actually learned how to work with lawyers, and they learned how to actually campaign and use legal instruments against companies and against people and against the government for not doing the right thing when it came to nature and society, right? That's interesting. And then also there's others who have been working with entry points and what we call the bureaucratic side of government. So you could have, I don't know, in India, do you have the civil service, or you have public servants or government administration? There has been a lot of work to include youth voices and to recruit youth and to have them in place when they're actually, when they've got their good solutions and projects, that they bring them into the government planning or the government planning office. And that's up to the older people to create these pathways, actually, right? So even with the lawyer thing, the juracy side, the bureaucratic side, and even in parliamentary side, it really is up to the older people to create these entry points for young people to be able to engage and contribute on these issues. And they do naturally have a more public good vision on these issues. So it's not, you know, so I think it's good. In Ireland, we have the Young Environmental Awards. So the schools self-organize in transition year to have the best projects. And then the schools bring in the legislators and they bring in the academics to say, take these ideas, implement these ideas. So there can be forces coming from, you know, the education system, or coming from legal side, or even coming from the government side, who are opening the door, and they are encouraging and rewarding young people to engage in these things. But demonstration is one thing, but it's much nicer to see young people involved in government processes and legal processes, and even coming through schooling and education, where they're empowered to be able to have an impact. But as I say, the door has to be opened by the older people, though, in all of those dimensions. It's an intergenerational, if you like, partnership that actually works. It's not young people alone, it's actually older people. And the way I say it, like, young people in this school can be very empowered. You can be very empowered in your sport. You could be very empowered when you go to university, very empowered when you get your job. But you have to admit that your grandparents and parents and teachers were supporting you, and they were behind you. And, you know, and not everyone has that, but a lot of people have that. And that's to recognize intergenerational, that the older people were there supporting you. So what I'd say, the biggest advice to young people is to partner with the older ones, the ones who actually can open the door for you and have the same sort of vision. And it's not only through protest. You can actually do it through understanding entry points in governance or legal frameworks, or in different university settings or school settings. And obviously tonight is that example where the board of management and the teachers and the parents have opened the door for this conversation for young people. And of course, the young people will understand something what I'm saying, but it's the older people who will take this and maybe create the pathways and the opportunities later. Do you know what I mean? So that's a big lesson, intergenerational cooperation. And if you read the Transforming Our World 2030 agenda carefully, you'll see in the preamble a call to action for intergenerational cooperation to implement the SDGs.
Yeah, thank you very much, sir. We had a lengthy discussion, and the students had also understood about your journey as well. So if you really keep a goal, everything will come and push you towards that goal. So it's not the economy which matters. So your mind, whatever you think matters a lot. So any last concluding remarks, sir, please?
No, again, just thank everyone for the nice introduction. and obviously the nice invitation from Dr. Nala. And again, we'll see each other potentially in New York, I suppose, at one of the Green School conferences, maybe. But I'm here, phone call or an email away, and my staff are always very willing to share all their resources and opportunities with anyone who emails and asks. So this conversation is not over. We can keep the conversation going, and it's great to be talking to the wonders of technology. Godlike technologies allows me to be in your houses and schools at this time of night. So this is something that didn't exist when I was young, for example. So so there is hope and opportunity everywhere for, as you say, once the goals are aligned, I think it can become very easy. Yeah.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Thank you all.
Stay safe. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Bye-bye.